This week on Forward.
We need to deliver a vision where people actually feel like they have a sense of purpose and optimism and making a difference. Because right now, people think that you do something, nothing makes a difference.
Yeah, voting harder is not going to get our way out of this mess, people. You know what I mean? Like, they've segmented us so that our votes are already pretty much baked into the cake.
Like, I feel like if I was the DNC or the RNC, this is exactly the situation I would want. It's red versus blue. It's easy. And my mom is still recovering from my decision. I don't think she ever will, but we hope.
You know, you could say to her, you know what, I'm in like pre-med for the country. we're going to get some freaking CPR on this station. It is my distinct pleasure to welcome to the podcast the co-founder and CEO of an awesome organization that brings young people together from across the ideological spectrum. Does that sound familiar? The co-founder and CEO of BridgeUSA, Manu Meel, joins us. Welcome, Manu.
Hey, Andrew. Thanks so much for having me. And I got to say, we knocked out a couple birds. Welcome to the hopeful majority.
Yes, I am a member of the hopeful majority. The people that are like, what the heck is going on? So for the people who don't know, what is BridgeUSA? It's an awesome org. I've attended events and even a national summit, either physically or virtually. But what is BridgeUSA?
Yeah, essentially the organization was built to solve one simple need, and that is to allow and give young people the chance to have conversations with people that are different than themselves. Very profound, very easy, simple stuff. I mean, essentially, the organization has college and high school chapters across the country, and we're building a movement to elevate the next generation of young people that feel like politics is not only too crazy, but it's losing touch with our reality. And what we got to do is we got to start having those difficult conversations. And critically, the fact of our work is, I mean, you think about this all the time, is we have to be able to disagree better. We have to live in a society in which we can actually solve our problems. And I see young people all the time talking and engaging, and our job is to elevate those voices. And the only other thing I would say is that to anybody that listens, and we talk about this a lot in our podcast as well, like, you know, it's everyday people that get up and make a difference. You know, it does. I mean, you got involved in the presidential campaign out of nowhere. You know, for me, I was a pre-med student that had zero interest in democracy until Milo Yiannopoulos showed up to UC Berkeley's campus, and then everything went crazy.
Yeah, and you've been doing this work already for a number of years. How many school chapters does BridgeUSA have?
Yeah, so we currently have 55 college chapters, 56 as of today morning, and 20 high school chapters. And we've launched this high school program because I thought was like, you know, it's not just that college students are polarizing. I mean, we need to start creating these spaces as soon as possible because we're having a hard time controlling the flow of information for anybody.
And so if someone wants to start a chapter in their high school or college, is that a thing? Can they do that?
Oh, not only can they do that, but you literally go to bridgeusa.org, start a chapter, high school, college. Any person, if you're listening to this right now, it doesn't matter where you stand in the political spectrum, but if you believe that we need to be united around a mindset, a vision, a temperament for how we engage, how we listen to each other. Again, this is not about what you think, this is about how we think. If you feel like we need to live in a society where we can have conversations, not just get along for the sake of get along, but actually have hard disagreements and solve our problems, BridgeUSA chapter is right for you. And I think anybody that's on our side that is interested in a new way of thinking about politics, the Forward Party is something that they should look into as well.
Oh, well, thank you for saying so, Manu. You were obligated to do so. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I'm being held hostage. Help.
So you've been working on BridgeUSA full time as the co-founder and CEO for years. Your parents are probably like, whatever happened to that med school thing? What has your experience been like? What are the ups and the downs?
Three things, and my mom is still recovering from my decision. I don't think she ever will, but we hope.
You know, you could say to her, you know what, I'm in like pre-med for the country. we're going to get some freaking CPR on this station.
I mean, we oftentimes say, Andrew, and you talk about this a lot, but we're essentially, if you're a liberal, we're inoculating people against conspiracy theories, and if you're a conservative, we're inoculating people against losing a sense of purpose and self. That's essentially what we're doing. I mean, there's three things that I've observed over the past couple of years, and I'm curious what you think about this. But here's what I've broadly seen, and you know this world and this country way better than I do. I mean, you've traveled through almost every corner. I've mainly been to campuses and high schools, and we're talking about vocational schools, community colleges. We're talking about large state schools all across the board, private schools, etc. The first thing we hear when we're talking to anybody is people are just scared. People are walking on eggshells. Nobody actually wants to have a conversation. I mean, how do you have a democracy if you can't talk to each other? It's that simple. So first, we've got to create a safety valve for people's pressure. We've got to create spaces where people can actually feel not just safe, but feel like they can productively engage. The second thing is that most people in this country, as you've seen and you talk about, have very similar aspirations. People want to have a job. They want to live with each other. They want to live in a world where their kids do better than themselves. They want to live in a society in which we feel heard. It's not that complicated. And actually, as a young person, I graduated college in 2020. I'm 3 years out, I would say. I think 3.5. We'll see. And to me, I have to ask you, like, how do we get here? Because as a young person, to me, this seems crazy. It seems like the moment that we've arrived at is one which just is so profoundly confounding, because the average person like you and I wants to live in this world that's pretty similar, and yet we see extreme tribalism and polarization.
Yeah. Did your parents immigrate to this country, Manu?
Yeah, they immigrated in 98.
So recently, wow. So my parents immigrated in the 60s. I was born in the 70s. And I do remember a more generally functional form of politics and media. There was a uniformity to it that now people can regard as not very representative. But there was also this zone of consensus around facts and decorum and a way of doing things. Now that stuff's all breaking down, and it's breaking down in ways big and small, good and bad. I would argue generally bad. So the major problem is that these institutions are faltering and they're not able to rejuvenate themselves, and we're not sure what the new ones are. So there are people who are starting new institutions, but that's a very, very difficult process in a lot of the most important zones of American life. You do have new ones that popped up, let's call it social media networks, that mushroomed with incredible adoption and whatnot, though I would argue most of those things have been kind of bad for other institutions. So if I had to draw it out for people, I jokingly say Democrats and Republicans were like vanilla versus French vanilla in the 70s and 80s. Like, which do you prefer? And back then they were ideologically quite similar. Now they started to diverge in the 60s with the Civil Rights Act, when the South flipped from Democrat to Republican. And then you had a whole series of structural changes in the 80s. The Reagan administration got rid of the fairness doctrine, which meant that you didn't have to tell both sides of a particular issue. Before that, you did. And so if you look at old-timey TV programs, you have two people talking to each other of different points of view. And because of that, then you could have polarized national media. Fox and MSNBC were started in the 90s after the Fairness Doctrine was repealed. Then you had Facebook come online in 2004. And simultaneously, the two major parties became more urban versus rural, educated versus non-educated, coastal versus interior. So instead of having two relatively identical-ish parties that had slightly different approaches to various issues, now they get separated into genuine tribal camps. And then the media is egging us on for the blue team or the red team, and then social media is pouring gasoline on the whole thing. And when you talk about people coming together and having discussions, Manu, the first thing that popped into my mind was the medium, where social media is not great for having nuanced conversations. It's about essentially trying to stick it to someone or pile on in a particular way. And then if you show that you're an effective tribal expressor, then the team goes, "Ooh, I like this tribal expressor." They pile it behind you. Which is, by the way a lot of cable news and works too nowadays. So that's why things seem so crazy, where you look up and if you log on, you're like, wow, this seems nuts. And then if you even turn on cable TV a lot of time, you're like, this seems nuts. I mean, heck, there was no cable news but before the mid 90s or so, really. So this is a 1.5 generation phenomenon.
I mean, this is what's interesting about this is that you talk about cable news egging us on. You talk about the medium and the importance of the media. The question I have to ask you is, it seems like, and I mean, your case in point for the opposite of this, but it seems like most leaders, most media pundits, when you see them in person, they're very different than what they are on TV.
Dude, I've been on set
running a race.
like dozens of times. They're different as soon as the camera light goes on.
Why is that?
You're like having a normal convo with them, and then all of a sudden it's like end. It's
well, I mean, what's odd about this is, and I mean, I can attest to this. Like the reason why our chapter students really appreciate having you on campus, the reason why I really appreciate our conversations. I mean, the first time I ever met you, and this was after having met a lot of political leaders, I said was like, you're the same way in a Zoom conversation as you are on TV, as you are, running a presidential race or running your current institution, the Forward Party, and you've shown that you can succeed with it. So, like, why is it? Is it profit? Is it what drives people to essentially turn into crazy, robot monsters when the light turns on?
Yeah, I'm going to quote Jen Polka, who said something that I thought was so spot on. I just want to make sure I get the verbiage right. So I just want to give her quote, which I thought was completely accurate. When systems or organizations don't work the way you think they should, it is generally not because the people in them are stupid or evil. It is because they are operating according to structures and incentives that aren't obvious from the outside. So if you look at a cable news pundit and you're like, whoa, this person seems a little bit sensationalist or whatnot, they're responding to minute-by-minute ratings. Literally, if people click off during a segment, producers will be in their ear almost at that moment saying, hey, like switch to graphics or do something. I mean, they have earpieces in. And there's a lot of financial pressure. There's a lot of jobs pressure. In a woebegone era, you could come on, you could deliver the news just like the person at the next channel. And, there are only 3 channels. So, there wasn't much choice. I mean, 3 network channels, not even like 3, cable.
Man, that must have been the age of the dinosaurs.
Cable mouthpiece. It's like Tom Brokaw, Peter Jennings, and Dan Rather. And they were frankly kind of indistinguishable as far as you could tell. There's Connie Chung in the mix. Love you, Connie. But there was a whole lot of stately decorum, and journalism took itself very seriously in a particular way. But now they're in freaking death matches for ratings on a nightly basis. And they're seeing their entire space get decimated. They're seeing their colleagues canned. And so it's either play ball or get consigned to oblivion is what happens. And so on good days, I feel bad for the people who are stuck in this system. Manu, I'm so grateful to the people who've supported me over the last number of years because I felt relatively insulated from these kinds of pressures. But when I was on TV, there were proddings where it's like, hey, we could kind of use some energy on this side. And, if I didn't provide that energy, then maybe I wasn't as back. Which, again, now I'm just like, well, I don't really care if I come on your show again. I am so pumped that the last election is coming out September 12th. The political thriller by yours truly and Stephen Marsh, the author of The Next Civil War, will be in stores everywhere. But you can buy your copy right now at andrewyang.com. Order now and be the first on the block to know how the next election turns out. It has all the twists and turns. Will it be the last election? Let's hope not. andrewyang.com for The Last Election. Buy it today. Thank you. Love you all.
The question that I'm leading towards, I'm thinking about is, what do you think you were able to do that allowed you to insulate yourself? Because, I mean, Jen's quote speaks perfectly to this, like, general, I think, theory of power that a lot of people have about Washington, D.C. and politics and institutions, which is that it's not that it's not that necessarily there's bad people in place. It's that the operating system of the institutions is what's corrupting people almost, right? It seems like that's what you're getting
Well,
at.
I mean, they're spending 30 to 60% of their time dialing for dollars,
Right.
and that'll mess you up pretty quick. I've done some dialing for dollars in my life, and doing it more than half of your professional hours would be insanely soul crushing and corruptive.
Do you think that when it comes to those institutions and these people and these processes, like essentially the way that I'm thinking about this is almost if the United States is a computer, the problem is not the computer; it's the operating system that the computer is operating on and running
Yep.
on. And go figure, trying to sell operating systems change.
Oh, that's what we're doing.
You
It's
know.
good times in the US of A. I mean,
Yep.
right now I'm running around saying ranked choice voting all the time, because I'm convinced that ranked choice voting is the closest thing we have to a key that will unlock any of the other good things.
What is ranked choice voting? Just for people that might not know that hear our stuff.
Ranked choice voting is a more modern voting system that allows everyone's vote to matter, and you can cast your vote for whomever you want. And if your person doesn't win, then your second choice vote gets counted until someone reaches a majority of the support. So let's say it was me, Manu, and three other people running for office, and then we all got 20%. Then in our current system, whichever one of us got 21% would win. That's kind of dumb. But in ranked choice voting, they would take the weakest candidate, look at their second choice votes, and then transfer their votes to the second choice and continue this process until one of us had 50.1%. So that way, whoever wins genuinely had majority support. It also discourages negative campaigning because if Manu trashes me, we both look kind of bad. And then the third candidate benefits. It's been demonstrated to help women and minority candidates. So ranked choice voting, it also, by the way, gets rid of the entire spoiler effect, because one of the things that everyone's freaked out about right now is, oh my gosh, if Joe Manchin or RFK or Cornel West runs for president, it's going to help Trump win. And if you had ranked choice voting, no problem. You could just rank Cornel West 1 and Joe Biden 2 and rest easy.
So it allows you to break out of the binary of the presidential system. Why isn't it working? Why isn't it out there?
Oh, it works everywhere it's been implemented. In New York, 85% of people want to do it again and found it easy to use. One of the jokes I tell Manu is that even my 7-year-old can rank favorite ice creams 1, 2,
Right.
3. Like, it's not very complicated. So everywhere it's been installed, it's been enormously helpful, including in Alaska, where it helped get Sarah Palin out and Mary Peltola in, and Lisa Murkowski back in, even though she voted to impeach Trump, because instead of having to go through just a Republican primary, which she would have certainly lost, she got to appeal to the entire general public, and then over 50% said, you know what, actually, I'm cool with Lisa Murkowski, even though she voted to impeach President Trump.
Can I run a theory of my theory of the case by you?
Please.
Okay, so I've prepped for this moment for my entire life, by the way, in case the listeners are wondering. So please grade me harshly on this one. But essentially, when you think about the people that voted for Mary Peltola, for example, right, or the people that supported your campaign, or the fact that there's so much cross ideological composition between Bernie supporters and Trump supporters, it seems like there is a broad swath of politics where the division is no longer necessarily left-right, like Democrat-Republican in the traditional sense, but it might be something more around mindset, behavior, around being, anti-establishment versus establishment, or being more open-minded versus being closed-minded, being more curious versus being a prisoner of your ideology. Do you find that? Do you feel like there's a tectonic shift in our divides, or do you think that it's still the traditional sort of diagnosis of the challenge? How do you think about it?
Oh, I totally agree with you that, and I've sat with the rural farmer in Iowa and the black mom in Harlem, and they're concerned about a lot of the same things. The problem right now is that they're getting separated into blue zones and red zones, and then we're meant to say, like, oh, you know who's to blame? The person over there that you disagree with, like that's why you're mad. And Americans are looking up saying, well, shoot, I guess if that's what you're offering me as an explanation. Meanwhile, both of them are mad about the healthcare system or the education system, or the fact their kids aren't going to have the same kind of future that they want. And so in many ways, and this is what the Forward Party is doing, and BridgeUSA as well in its own realm, is that we want to try and expose this left-right ideological spectrum as nonsense and bullshit, and say, you know what, guys, you're being set up. Maybe our mindsets are a little bit different, to your point, or our cultures and backgrounds are a little different, but you're not my enemy. Like, the enemy is the system that's turning us against each other and manipulating us and not giving any of us what we want.
I was at Monticello 3 or 4 days ago, which is Thomas Jefferson's home. And I was like, man, what would he say? You know, I found a box of his hair. His hair. The Monticello.
Did you take it? And if this was a sci-fi movie, you would then clone him, and then he'd pop up, and then he'd bring us all together. And then in this day and age, everyone would throw rocks at him, being like, "We hate you, Thomas Jefferson. Yeah. Go back to the grave where you came from."
Oh man,
it's a reasonable summary.
It is. That's basically our politics. Is Thomas Jefferson rises from the dead, and then everybody just shits on him. Do you think? I was thinking about this. Have you followed Vivek's candidacy at all? I think when
sure
you and I
thing,
saw each other
man.
in person.
Yeah, for sure. I did an interview about him with the Atlantic last week.
Did you see the Iowa State Fair and him rapping "Lose Yourself"?
Sure.
Did you have to also milk? Did you also have to milk the cows when you were? Did you have to go to the Iowa State Fair?
I went to the Iowa State Fair twice, man, because I declared in 2018, and so then I went 2018, which was not exactly a positively reinforcing experience. That everyone was like, "Who the fuck are you?" And I was like, "I'm Andrew Yang. I'm running for president." And everyone was like, "Whatever." I will say it was a nice change of pace in 2019, because 2019 there were TV cameras and crowds, and people knew who I was. There was actually a video somewhere. It makes me mad that this isn't out there, of the same woman serving, I think it was corn, to me in 2018 and 2019. In 2018, she was like, "Good luck with that." And then 2019, she was like, "Hello," and like all friendly. It was like, the same person, just a year apart, because I'd been introduced to Iowans in that time. But yeah, I'm a regular at the Iowa State Fair. Think about the term private citizen, keyword private. That's what you want to be when you go online, but unfortunately not a whole lot we do is kept to ourselves nowadays. It's more like exposed. Who wants to be an exposed citizen? Not you, not me. To keep my data private when I go online, I turn to ExpressVPN because it's incredibly easy to use to secure my data, and it can do the same for you. It will reroute your connection and mask your IP address, so basically everyone cannot see what you're doing, and you too can do what you like in the privacy of your own internet. So if, like me, you believe that your data is your business, secure yourself with the #1 rated VPN on the market. Go to expressvpn.com/yang. Don't forget to use my link so you can get 3 extra months free. That's expressvpn.com/yang. expressvpn.com/yang to learn more.
I mean, your candidacy came out of nowhere. I mean, most people in my generation are really have a positive view of your personality, your persona. I mean, they might disagree on ideology here and there, but they appreciate your vibe and your authenticity, which is pretty cool.
I'm so glad. That was one of the most invigorating aspects of the campaign, is meeting young people who'd say to me, by the way, I get this almost every day. They say, "Thank you for interesting me in politics, because before you, I didn't think it was something I should pay attention to, but because of you now, I'm actually kind of into it. And I'm sadder as a result." No, I'm kidding.
No. Well, here's where I'm
more informed but sadder, more concerned. And if you're concerned, start a BridgeUSA chapter and join the Forward Party. We'll try and dig our way out of this mess.
There you go. We're gonna have to clip that. You should start a BridgeUSA chapter. You should think about the Forward Party, and importantly, we all got to get our heads out of the sand. Okay, here's another sort of thing that I've been thinking about, which is, look, I mean, when I last saw you in San Francisco, you were speaking to a crowd in a local bookstore in San Francisco, a real establishment here, and I mean, the crowd, you were riling up the crowd about systems change, about processes, about the fact that we have to think not about the issue right now, but our democracy as a whole.
Yeah, voting harder is not going to get our way out of this mess, people. You know what I mean? Like that they've
Yeah,
segmented us so that our votes are already pretty much baked into the cake.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
Well, I
the,
mean,
the only legitimate course of action that might make a difference is if millions of Americans decided to move to swing states. If you're not talking about that, then everything else is like essentially just barking at the wind.
so I think that that fundamentally assumes, again, our starting point, which is that most Americans are on the same page. That, and maybe not ideologically, but they are on the same page in terms of wanting to live the life they do. But how do you respond to sort of the devil's advocate, the critique of that assumption, which is that in fact there are deep systemic divisions that require real combat?
Oh, there are deep systemic divisions. It's just the question is right now, is this the way to resolve them? You know, like having it's like, if I can just eke out this one thing, then I can like stick it to you for 2 or 4 years, and you're going to stick it to me in 4 or 4 years while the divisions get deeper and more inflamed. That's the course we're on. And anyone who thinks that's a path to salvation, I mean, you know, I don't see it really. So the question is, how can we change that dynamic so that there's a resolution? And I would use women's reproductive rights as a great example where, look, right now, the majority of people are not getting what we want, in large part because of the system. And this includes people with R's next to their name. And so if you just decide, look, it's team blue versus red, then we wind up with this deranged result that the vast majority of us don't want. You should be able to look up and say, you know what? We should try and reorient the system. And then if you get that, then you can put a lot of things in for women's reproductive rights. Reasonable, common sense firearm regulation, climate change, you name it. I mean, right now we're just being set up, and it's disintegrating around us all the time.
I remember when I was a freshman at UC Berkeley. This was like 2017, right after the Milo Yiannopoulos protests had happened around free speech. Afterwards, we were sitting in this classroom, right? And in this classroom, this professor starts talking about the protests. This one student gets up and starts shouting at this professor. There's like 15 students in this classroom. I mean, this was basically my introduction to politics in a nutshell. This one student stands up, starts shouting at the professor, saying this is a bad idea, going a little crazy. This other kid gets up, starts shouting at the student. So now the students are shouting at each other, right? There's two of them. The rest of us 13 are just sitting there completely silent, you know, me being my very, normal, Asian self, ceding authority to those in power, just sitting back, watching these two go at it. 13 of us are sitting there. I'm like, this is insane. Nobody says anything. We leave the classroom. 13 of us get together. We have a conversation. I was like, did you like that? Nobody liked that. Everybody was not. Nobody was on the same page. Everybody felt like this was a terrible. And then I suddenly realized if one of us had given the other 12 of us the social permission to stand up and say, no, your method of operating is wrong, it empowers the majority, what I say the hopeful majority of people, to actually do something about it. That's just, to me, that seems like our politics in a nutshell. There's one person on one side, one person on the other, and it's a tyranny of the minority in an essence.
Yeah, it's what we have to do is give each other permission and then build a tribe, whether it's BridgeUSA or Forward Party, and then say, look, guys, put the pitchforks and Molotov cocktails down, please, and let's try to figure out how we can live together and maybe even advance common solutions. And I referred to a couple of issues earlier that are dividing the American people, though there is actually a pretty strong consensus on both of them. I mean, when I ran for president, I believe certain things. I think most people can figure out where I am on a lot of issues. I mean, heck, I had like 140 policy positions during the presidential. But the main impetus for my running was that I think this economy is going to become dehumanizing and punitive, and it already is. And then AI is going to come online and kick everyone to the curb. I was just on the picket line with the actors and writers in Hollywood, and I mean, the studios are trying to scan 1,000 background actors and then never hire a background actor again, which, by the way, makes perfect sense for them. It's just like, what's that? I need a young, handsome South Asian. I've got one right here.
You should tell my mom that.
And then you, the individual who got scanned, got paid the one time, but then I don't have to pay anyone else ever again.
Right.
And so the actors are like, well, that's not cool at all. There are 160,000 people in that union, most of whom are just showing up on set every once in a while and having like a side income. That's something that we can see very clearly. But there's a bunch of other stuff coming down the pike that's gonna steal up and take people by surprise. I didn't see ChatGPT developing this quickly when I was running for president even a few years ago. And folks like Tristan Harris who keep up with this say they literally have to update their data every day on what the heck AI is doing. It's not like you could turn away for 2 months and come back and it's the same. It's literally like, oh, whoop, changed again. So, who's not changing again just like that? Us. What I mean? Like, maybe the next day, pretty much the same, and maybe a little.
I mean, not only are we not changing enough, but we have yet to figure out how to deal with social media, let alone AI. I mean, it's like it feels like we're studying for a test in the 8th grade, and the 10th grade AP test is about to come up around the corner, and we've yet to even open that book. And
Totally.
it seems like nobody actually has the incentive to solve the challenge. It almost, in some ways, and this might feel a little conspiratorial, but those of us that are outside of the political scene and only looking in sometimes feel like those in power are actually okay with things being bad because it makes politics much easier. Like, I feel like if I was the DNC or the RNC, this is exactly the situation I would want. It's red versus blue. It's easy.
Yeah, that's one of the perverse aspects of today, Manu, where if things deteriorate, it actually is probably fine for you in the sense that it's like, oh, I can get you more animated and upset. I mean, right now, their small dollar donations are down cycle over cycle by 25% or so.
Right.
And they're just like, oh, what are we going to do? And I mean, the truth of it is that we're all burnt out. We've all gotten the freaked out emails over and over again. At this point, we're like, oh my gosh, by like the 300th freaked out email, like I'm not going to hit the donate button as fast. And then like, oh no, what are we going to do? It's like, by the way, in this case too, it may not be the worst thing in the world because it's affecting both sides. So it's pretty much canceled each other out, and that like Americans might be looking for another path forward. But yeah, the powers that be don't hate this stuff, and the unfortunate truth is that good policy is probably negatively related to your job security. Where if a bunch of people came forward and said, "Hey, here are a bunch of AI regs," there are probably some big time tech companies that are like, "Ooh, I didn't like that." And meanwhile, if they just grandstand and like say things, then everyone is fine to let the problem fester because the real players are like, okay, good, they're being cool, like and we can handle them saying things about us. We just don't want them to genuinely regulate us.
So amidst all of this where, people's paychecks are online, people's job security is online, there's real policy issues, people, let's say, on the side of thinking that climate change is a real threat, see the fires in Hawaii, and they want to get out there. Somebody that's a conservative sees the woke culture war issues being rammed down their throat, and they're like, this is insane, we got to fight this. What is the fundamental argument from your standpoint? And I have a take on this, but I'm curious about yours because you've pressure tested in front of so many people. What is your fundamental take on how you break through that noise to actually make people think about the system as opposed to that really unfortunate, disaster event in that certain state or that really unfortunate job loss that's about to come around the corner? And you say, hey, we need to vote for the person that's voting to ensure that primaries and gerrymandering are not a thing, in the way that they are in the status quo.
Yeah, I try and explain to them, look, right now the incentives are working against us. The incentives are working against good policy. And if we don't change the incentives, we're just going to keep grinding ourselves into oblivion. So let's try and fix the incentives. And the way to fix the incentives are getting rid of primaries and moving towards all-party ranked choice voting, like they did in Alaska, like they just voted in Nevada. And it's going to be on the ballot again in Nevada. That there's a race going on right now around modernizing the system and the system crumbling before our eyes. Now, which do I think is going to win? I mean, I'm fighting like mad for the first one. And there are things that people can do. One of the exciting things, Manu, and one of the reasons why I'm so pumped to talk to you, is I say to people all the time, it's like, what percentage of Americans would you need to get into something like Forward and Energize for us to change everything?
Safe. 5%, 10%.
That's exactly right. You don't need 51%. You get 5% of Americans really zeroed in on the fact. It's like, okay, we're being set up.
Yep.
It's
a toehold. You need a foothold in the population.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you have a 20% approval rating of U.S. Congress and then a 94% reelect rate of incumbents. It's like, look, we're being set up. We're getting carved into blue and red zones, and they're just patting us on the head and saying there's absolutely nothing you can do. So if 5% of us stand up and say, okay, I get the game now, and I'm going to shake it up so that you have to listen to the general population instead of just your cronies and the special interests and the ideological edge, that's where we're going, and we will vote for people that represent that. You get 5% of Americans into it, we change everything. This podcast is sponsored by Helix Sleep. If you're a regular listener, you know that I am a mattress guy and that I believe investing in your mattress is one of the smartest, savviest things you can do to be happier, healthier, more energized, more able to live your life. It's why I'm so pumped to recommend Helix Sleep, because they are the mattress company that will send a customized mattress to you based upon your sleep preferences, risk-free, made in the USA, #1 mattress picked by GQ and Wired magazine, and there is a special sale for Labor Day, the best discount I have ever seen them offer, 25% off. That's right, Helix is offering 25% off all mattress orders and 2 free pillows for our listeners in honor of Labor Day, probably because a lot of you are moving, need a mattress. Go to helixsleep.com/yang and use code HelixPartner25. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. Certainly want to make common cause with you and BridgeUSA at every turn, and really pumped to be able to share this journey with you, and love the fact that you've gone so far from that college event till now, where most people would have at some point said, you know what, it's med school time, or it's JOB time, or whatever the heck. And not that you don't have a job, you have a very big job. You have the kind of job where if you and I do our jobs, then we might be able to unlock the solutions to the truly important problems of this time. And without us getting this stuff under control, the biggest problems will get worse.
I mean, as your friend Dave Chappelle says, it takes one to know one. And what's super powerful about this work right now is, I mean, I would not be here without my best friends. Ross, who you met 2 or 3 weeks ago, lives in the other room. We have a family behind this. And I think, as you know, and this is, forget politics for a second. I mean, to build anything, of course, there's purpose required, there's ambition required, but ultimately, it's the people, right? And I think I don't know if you get asked this question a lot when you're in campuses, but oftentimes when I'm on campuses, people ask me all the time, especially younger people, like, what's the secret to building something? How do you respond to apathy? How do you respond to burnout? And the fact is, most successful people are burnt out oftentimes. There is a lot of apathy. Like, I learned this from you. It's like, actually, like, the people that you see on TV.
You learned this from me. Sorry, continue, Manu.
Yes. For the record, I learned that successful people are apathetic. No, I'm kidding. No, but it's the truth. Is all of us struggle. All of us struggle. The question is, what do you do about it? And you can either, like, in some ways, I think the biggest threat to democracy is not even like blatant authoritarianism from wherever side you think it's coming from, but literal just apathy, just disengagement.
Oh, someone asked me a number of months ago, what do you think is going to happen? And I answered without thinking at all. I said, we're going to slump our way into authoritarianism.
I mean,
that's the trajectory.
Yep. It's because you're ceding the battle space. You're ceding the battle space to those voices. Okay, I got to ask you a vexing question, because it's coming to my mind right now. I can hear somebody that's listening to this say, ask this question. I got to ask you this question, which is, how do you respond to the claim that when you build that 5% of the population, right, when you engage that 5% within something like the Forward Party, that it facilitates it accidentally backfires and causes, the rise of President Trump, or it accidentally backfires and causes the rise of the Democratic candidate to win? How do you think about that?
Well, if we activate the 5% in the way that we envision, you could wind up with 1, 2, or 3 U.S. senators who are stand there and say, you know what, guys, let's do what most Americans want. Congress is harder. You might need 10 to 12 members, and in this system, that's very, very hard. But 1, 2, or 3 U.S. senators is doable. Hundreds of mayors around the country is very doable. Thousands of locally elected officials, including state reps, is very doable. And keep an eye on the Forward Party for announcements on that front. So the Forward Party, we're shooting for 500 aligned elected officials by next year, and that's significant.
And what does it mean for them to be aligned?
So in some cases, it's like, look, I'm a Forward Party member, and that's what I am. I'm a Forwardist. So that's let's call him Mayor Jordan Marlowe in Newberry, Florida. That's his jam. He's like, I'm a Forward Party member. That's my party affiliation. And then there are others who are Democrats or Republicans or nonpartisan who say I'm affiliated with the Forward Party, which means I'm down with nonpartisan primaries and ranked choice voting and just trying to get stuff done. And I want freedom from the ideological conflict and back and forth. So you get 500 elected officials who reflect that, then that's a genuine independent political movement. And we're probably going to get there in the next 10, 12 months, which means it would have taken 2 years. So I'm super proud of that. And I think we can go nationwide, like we can impact national politics as soon as 2024. We're going to try and rally independent swing voters in the swing states. So that's Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Georgia, Michigan, North Carolina, and say, look, guys, let's go for whichever major party actually wants to reform the system. And that's something we can do that can hopefully move us in a positive direction next year. So people who look at this and say, oh, you're going to screw it up somehow, would be like, well, like on the facts, in all of these 500,000 elected races around the country, 75% of them are uncontested or uncompetitive, so there's not much screwing up going on. The only thing people are concerned about at that level is the presidential, and we're not participating in the presidential. So if you want to be concerned about the spoiler, there are other folks you can go talk to, not us. If you want to have the mayor of Fort Collins be someone who just answers to you, by the way, she joined the Forward Party, so that's specific. Like, wear your jam. If you want sensible school board members or county executives like that, that's us. If you want people who are trying to free people from like this, lose, pass the baton back and forth while the house burns. That's us. And one of the things, I mean, I said this in the San Francisco event, and you joke about this, but like people, because of like press confusion and frankly, like just false assertions, like, oh, you're going to, help Trump win. And I'm just like, look, you guys are doing that. You set up a system where, and like, I'm going to be here trying to keep Trump from winning. Like, I have absolutely nothing to do with it. Like, you guys are slumping us toward authoritarianism, and folks like me and Manu are trying to energize people to think for themselves and free us from a system that is going to end up in a very dark place, probably in the not so distant future, unless something changes.
And I think it's not only that that something changes, because I think to an extent that change is not only necessary, but it shakes up the system. But the number one sentiment, again, that I hear on the road is people just saying, well, all is lost. But the fact is that, I mean, the United States in 2026, Andrew, is going to be 250 years old. But that's not actually old. In the state of human history, I mean, 250 years is a snapshot. And while it might be the oldest democracy, I mean, when you think about empires, you think about nation states, I think people need to recognize that it is within their power to actually do something about it. I think we have to, and this is something that I think when we think about this being a foundational founding moment, 1776 moment, you think about 1939 moment, you think about a 2001 moment. I mean, we need to deliver a vision where people actually feel like they have a sense of purpose and optimism and making a difference. Because right now, people think that you do something, nothing makes a difference.
Yeah, no, they have caught on, really. It's like when young people say my vote doesn't matter, guess what? You're probably right. It's probably the case that your vote does not matter. I could tell based on where you live, whether it matters or not.
So what type of action should they take?
So really, it's like, so let's make it matter. Let's make it matter not by playing their game, but by saying, let's change the game. Let's build a positive political movement that you can be a major part of and help guide real policy conversations at the local level and eventually the national level, that isn't beholden to special interests, that wants things like, I'll say what I want, like term limits that would enable young people like you to actually have power, as opposed to just watching other people fuck the country up.
Did you see Dianne Feinstein's 90 and
it's painful,
stories?
And there was a time when she was an awesome, vibrant public servant, but at some point you should say, hey, it's time for the next generation to lead. One of the things I can say is that if I'm still trying to cling to the stage past a certain age, someone just fucking grab a hook and yank me off. And they can just play this clip, be like, Yang, you said you get the fuck off if you were, doddering. I'd be like, oh yeah, you're right, I am doddering. Get me the fuck off. So
you need to create a sustainability plan for the Yang Gang.
There'll be an AI me just doing his thing. Hey YouTube, glad you're enjoying the podcast. If you really like it, hit subscribe, and then YouTube will notify you every time we have a bang up new guest. Thank you. So, but you're totally right that there's a lot of it doesn't matter, my vote doesn't matter. And the darkest thing that just occurred to me just now, it's I don't matter. And
which is, I think, by the way, the deeper problem.
Yeah, that is the deeper problem. Yeah. But to say, look, you matter a whole heck of a lot. I love you. Your country should love you. And what we need is a genuine, popular, positive political movement to throw the yoke off of us and say, why are we letting our country go to hell in a handbasket when we can do something about it? Let's elect people that actually answer to us. And by the way, what I'm suggesting is that's not going to happen in the current system. There is, by the way, a Princeton study, there is no relationship between what Americans want and the policy we get. No relationship. That was actually a study. So right now our will is getting completely distorted and diluted through this funhouse mirror system, this two-party system, the primary system, the blue-red system, the 90% uncompetitive district system. Right. And we need to shake that up to have a real say, to have a real chance. Is it easy? No. Is it fast? No. Is it the only way out? Yes. And Manu, when you talk about me and my journey, in many ways, when I came off the presidential trail, I had to reckon with the fact, look, a lot of people got behind me and supported me and believed me, and I really appreciated it. I loved them for it. I mean, it helped make what could have been a devastatingly bad journey into a positive journey. So I'm really, really grateful. And I owed them an answer. I owed them a path. And I said, look, according to my best analysis, the best expert I could find, this is the path. And then now I'm here building the path, and super grateful for anyone who wants to help.
Yeah. And I couldn't say this more about you, which is that for anybody, regardless of the politics, regardless of how you approach the work, the fact is that in the most ambitious experiment in the history of democracy, you need incredibly ambitious people. And who cares about people that are just pushing the current system when you have to think about invention? Thomas Jefferson, Andrew, this is part of our board reading, and I was reading this, is he talked about a revolution every 20 years. Now, I'm not saying that that's what we need, but the innovation is the engine of democracy. Push people forward. See what I did there?
Heck, it's not every 20 years. At least every 200 years, we should probably do something different. A little bit different.
250.
And by the way, in Thomas Jefferson's time, too, you know what they were not talking about? Democrats and Republicans. Totally made up afterwards. Right. During the Founding Fathers, they were party's bad. George Washington, famously on the way out, party's bad. John Adams, two parties would be a great evil across the land. Party's bad. Thomas Jefferson kind of dilly-dallied with the parties a little more, but
yeah, he was a little bit more of a party guy.
But then this two-party system got completely fabricated and installed at the state level. There's not a word about it in the Constitution, not a word about it really at the federal level. It's just everyone kind of put it in place as a giant control mechanism, and then they had two parties just trading. You get it, I get it, you get it, I get it, until eventually it ended up migrating into this polarized mess we have, where now tensions are rising and rising, and it's like a pressure cooker and there's no release valve. The only release valve we have in the system, by the way, where none of our votes matter, is the presidential. And that's how you end up with a fucker like Donald Trump winning. It's like a bunch of Americans be like, yeah, fuck it. It's like the only thing I'm given in this system is a big middle finger. So I guess that's what I'm going to do. And, and then we didn't even learn our lesson. Anyway, don't get me started.
Do you think...
Super bad. Because you know how we ended up losing to Trump? A number of things. But part of it was that the DNC freaking shoehorned Hillary Clinton and said, this is our candidate. Going to take this thing. I think Bernie beats Trump. And then we're going to do it again. We're going to do it again.
Well, that's a big can of worms you just had to open at the end of the podcast. But I have to ask you, why... You and I talked to a lot of people that voted for Joe Biden and a lot of people that voted for Donald Trump. And it seems like at this moment, there are legitimate grievances that people that voted for Trump have. And there seem to be legitimate grievances that people that voted for Biden have. How do you deal with this like moment of not trying to create false equivalent? How do you tackle that question of false equivalencies of the moral?
I've got the real answer, Manu. The only thing that would work in American life is we give whoever loses this election a replica of the White House and a 4-year contract to go to that replica and act like the president and just freaking beam it out to their people. And then everyone will be happy.
Have you let Mark Zuckerberg know that could be an AR world that he could build?
You should totally just like that's really the answer. Just like give them both what they want. And then everyone's like, yeah. Then their perception of the economy will be better. Their perception of what's going on around them will be better. I'll be like, yeah.
It's all about perception.
That's really where we are in American life.
It's all about perception. Here, I got one last question on my side. And I actually asked you this a while ago, and I'm curious to see if your answer's changed on this, which is that I often find myself having built and done this work with like some of my best friends that sometimes like it really does suck. Right. Sometimes like you just do not have any energy to go. You're just exhausted. You also feel like, what's the point? There's feelings of existentialism, all of that sort of stuff. Right. And what is your why? Like what keeps you? What's your why? Like why do you do what you do?
I gotta say, Manu, I have the most privileged version of this thing because like I was a do-gooder. You're a do-gooder. I love you for it. You and I know do-gooders. I have the best fucking version of this journey that anyone can imagine because like I go out on the street. And someone will just say to me, it'll be like, hey, Yang, thumbs up. Like, like I get that shit every single day. More than that. I get people coming to me and being like, oh, thank you. Like, you got me interested in politics. Thank you. You made more sense than anyone. Thank you. Stick with it. I get that every single day. Oh, I get that every single day. I go out in public looking like myself, I should say. I don't get that every single day. But if I go to the store or the airport on a particular given day, I will get that. And that's fucking amazing. People are telling me they want me to keep doing stuff, and I'll keep doing it as long as people want me to. If there comes a day when everyone's like, okay, Yang, like, go home, you're 80, whatever, I'll be like, all right, cool. And the way I'm built, I'll actually, frankly, enjoy going home because like that's because, I happen to like,
I mean, that's what you and I talked about is we're not driven by power. We're driven by desire to actually do good. And once the time is up, the time is up.
Oh, yeah. I would love to work myself out of a job. Please, America, please help work me and Manu out of our current jobs. On that note, Manu, how can someone support you and your work at BridgeUSA? BridgeUSA.org.
100%. I appreciate that. If you're the parent of a college-age student or a high school-age student, BridgeUSA.org, we got you covered. We're building the largest and fastest-growing movement of young people that are ready to change how our politics look for the 21st century. I mean, it's ready. If you're a college student, you're a high school student, you feel like the college Democrats, the college Republicans don't matter. If you're a STEM student, if you're a business person, the fact is that every facet of our life, Andrew, I mean, you and I talk about this all the time, is experiencing a deep dysfunction and breakdown in our ability to communicate. And that's what Bridge is doing. We're building these chapters, we're empowering these folks, and alongside leaders and organizations like yourselves and leaders that are adjacent to us. I mean, you and I talk about, we have real Democrats, we have real Republicans, we have real ideologically driven people in this work, because this is not a fight between left, right. This is a fight between temperaments, a fight between mindset. It's a fight between whether we want to live in a world. High and low
is the way Tim Urban would put it. It's high and low. It's trying to elevate things.
I agree. It's between the high brain and the low brain. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's elevate people's brain functioning. Are you all a nonprofit?
We're a nonprofit. We're a 501c3.
Oh my gosh. It's the kind of organization that everyone loves to give to because there's
Oh my God.
a tax break. You can tell your employer to match it. It's bridgeusa.org, people. How wholesome is this? Look at Manu. Help keep his parents happy and off his back. BridgeUSA.org. I will see you on the trail, my friend. And at a campus. Let's get me to a campus ASAP.
Oh, we'll get you to a campus. We already got some requests in, so we're going to get you to campus and appreciate you gracing our guests in the hopeful majority.
Yes. Stay hopeful, majority.